Coming up next, there must have been something in the water back in the mid to late 1960s because legendary bands and artists wrote some of the most life-changing songs ever. Today, we're going to celebrate a true lost art. Songs that stick it to the man. And we have some stories that have never been told here. From an accidental protest song from rock's greatest poet, he put lyrics to a melody from the 1800s, but he wrote the lyrics down so fast and messy that night, when he played it live for the very first time, he couldn't read his own handwriting. He had to make up the lyrics on the spot, and it became an all-time standard. Then there was a legendary song that the singer didn't like at all. He didn't write it. In fact, he recorded a bunch of songs, and his voice was so shot after that, he trudged through this song without any care. It was raspy, it was rough, it was haggard. He knew it was just a scratch vocal, and they'd redo it later. But then the label put it out as is. Luckily, it was just a B-side, though. But then a DJ mistakenly played the wrong side, and it became a #1 hit overnight. And it helped push the 26th Amendment across the finish line. And then there was a song that was taken straight from the Bible, and its writer added his own 2 cents to the scriptures, and it made it a protest song. Let's get into it. Hey, music junkies. Good to see you. I was listening to the radio the other day, and this old station here in my small town was playing a couple of songs from the 60s. And these songs truly changed the world. They were protest songs that were released right in the middle of some turbulent years in America. And I thought, what happened to the great protest song? Ones that brought everybody together, but were still protests. We've had some pretty turbulent times over the last 20 or so years, but I can't really think of songs by major artists that became universal protest songs that all of us sang together. Not like the ones in the 60s. So I thought, I'm going to do a countdown of some of the great ones of the 60s, and maybe along the way you guys can throw out some great ones from the 70s and 80s, even the last 30 years if there are any. Songs that were stick-it-to-the-man anthems that moved the needle and changed everything. I mean, today it kind of seems like no one wants to stick it to the man. In fact, it seems like some bands and musicians have become the man, in a way. Anyway, here are my top 8 protest songs of the 60s, and we start with an iconic track that was leaked to a radio station before it was even close to being ready for prime time. It still went all the way to #1 on the singles chart. At number 8, I've got Eva Destruction by Barry Maguire. Eva Destruction influenced political activism, particularly with the lyric, "You're old enough to kill, but not for voting." This helped fuel the movement to lower the voting age to 18. True story.
You're old enough to kill, but not for voting. You don't believe.
It was a profound example of how a song can evoke change. The song's message, that resonated with a generation experiencing the civil rights movement, the Vietnam War, and the Cold War, becoming a rallying cry for so many.
Tell me over and over and over again.
Eva Destruction, that grew out of P.F. Sloan's study of Jewish mysticism and his frustration with global problems, turning the song into a conversation with God. A prayer is what he said. When P.F. Sloan brought the song to Barry Maguire, it was just one of 4 songs he brought. Barry didn't like Eva Destruction, not at all. In fact, he recorded the other 3 songs first, and he was so tired by that time, his voice was just shot. He almost didn't record it.
You understand what I'm trying to say? Can't you feel the fear?
But even then, he just pushed through it, and his vocal was haggard and raspy. It didn't help that the lyrics were just scrawled on a crumpled scrap of paper. Now, he did the vocal in a hurry. He focused on the lyrics that he could barely read, and he felt the vocal was crap. And so they planned to record a slicker take later. That was the plan.
You don't believe we're on the eve of destruction.
Problem is, the unpolished vocal that got leaked to radio stations before the final version was finished. But luckily, it was just a B-side. Then a DJ in the Midwest accidentally played the B-side, the wrong side of the record. And listeners, they lit up the phones demanding more and more, and the station kept playing it despite label pushback that they were not playing an approved version. Now, because of the overwhelming response, ABC Dunhill released the rough demo as a single because the fully produced version wasn't even close to being finished.
My blood's so mad, feels like coagulating.
It didn't matter though, because the audience instantly connected to the song's sentiment. And really, Barry's authentic vocal, it actually made it even more relatable.
Full of senators don't pass legislation and marches alone.
Its provocative anti-war lyrics about Vietnam, nuclear threats, and social issues sparked radio airplay bans in many markets, though. A lot of stations refused to play it outright. They felt like it was anti-government. But that controversy, That's what ironically helped catapult it to #1 on the Billboard Hot 100. It always happens, right?
This whole crazy world is just too frustrating, and you tell.
Sloan aimed to write a song that cut through the hypocrisy and the hatred, not just make a political jab. P.F. Sloan would later say, and I quote, "The media claimed that the song would frighten little children. I'd hoped through this song to open a dialogue with Congress and the people. The media banned me from all national television shows." Now, oddly enough, they didn't ban Barry. The United States fell under threat. So any positive press on me or Barry, that was just considered unpatriotic then. A great deal of madness, as I remember it. I told the press it was a love song and for humanity. That's all it was. It ruined Barry's career as an artist, and in a year, I would be driven out of the music business as well. End of quote. So both artists laid it all on the line for this song. Not long after, Barry Maguire was tapped by the Mamas and the Papas to sing the lead vocal on California Dreamin'. You know this story? He felt he'd have another hit here. But then he was shocked when he heard on the radio the song, and his vocal had been deleted entirely by John Phillips. It was a devastating time for Barry Maguire. Coming in #7, it's a black comedy tune written and performed by the lead singer of the band Country Joe and the Fish. I feel like I'm fixing to die rag. This song is a 1965 anti-Vietnam War protest song by Country Joe McDonald, using dark humor and satire in a ragtime groove to spotlight the war's absurdity.
And it's 1, 2, 3, what are we fighting for?
It started out for a magazine and a play, but it exploded as a counterculture anthem, especially after its famous Woodstock performance in '69.
Well, come on, all of you big, strong men. Uncle Sam, need your help again?
That cemented its status as one of the era's most recognizable protest songs, maybe one of the most recognizable of the entire rock era.
Now, come on, Wall Street, don't be slow. I'm man, this is war, a go-go.
All right, the Woodstock story. This is really cool. So Country Joe and the Fish wasn't supposed to perform at Woodstock as a solo act. But on Saturday afternoon, while the stage was being set for Santana to perform, he was asked to fill some time and keep the audience entertained. Joe was sitting on stage, and the promoters basically forced him to go out there with his guitar and play by himself. Nobody paid any attention to what Joe was playing until he went into the Fish cheer and the Fixin' to Die rag.
C! Get a K! What's that spell?
And that solo performance, that got him into the Woodstock documentary. A lot of people forget that Woodstock, that festival, was a colossal disaster. There were so many problems, front and back of house. Joe's solo performance and how he got that sea of humanity to sing along became a highlight of the Woodstock legacy and the beginning of the next phase of Joe's career.
Come on. And it's 1, 2, 3. What are we fighting for?
So while most of the protest songs from the 60s were inspired by the drudgery of the Vietnam War, our next featured track on the countdown came from protests, actually a word I can't see in here, RIOTS, on the streets at Los Angeles. And number 6 on our countdown of the top 8 protest song of the 60s, I've got For What It's Worth by Buffalo Springfield. Stephen Stills wrote the Buffalo Springfield song in November 1966 in response to the Sunset Strip protests, sparked by a 10 p.m. youth curfew and Pandora's Box, the nightclub, closing. As Stephen wrote, there was definitely something happening there.
There's something happening here. But what it is...
Stephen saw the clashes as a cop dance and a funeral for Pandora's Box, a sign of a generation's culture being squeezed out by the local government. Pandora's Box, was a beloved nightclub near UCLA, was set to be demolished to ease traffic, drawing students from high school to college to march against the move. Flyers went out and radio stations promoted a rally for November 12th of '66, and about 1,000 young demonstrators showed up, and there were even cameos from celebrities like Jack Nicholson and Peter Fonda. What began as a peaceful gathering soon turned tense as armored police moved in, and the confrontation grew into a standoff. Now, for Stephen Stills, the sight of armored cops facing off against the crowd freaked him out. It left a lasting, haunting impression. Stephen knew that he needed to leave the area before things got completely out of hand with all that chaos. So when he returned to his home in Topanga Canyon, Stephen wanted to make sure he didn't lose the rush of what he had just witnessed. So he immediately sat down and he quickly scribbled out the lyrics for What It's Worth. He did it in like 10 minutes. For my money, It's got to be the greatest song ever written in 10 minutes, but that's why the song works so well.
Nobody's right if everybody's wrong.
The compact verses and chorus, they're perfect. There's not a misused syllable in this song. Because the incident Stills witnessed happened during the Vietnam War era, many listeners read the lyrics as about the war, though Stephen later said it was a lot broader than that. While rooted in those events, he also saw the song as a larger anthem for anyone stuck in political or social conflict. That's why it's evolved into one of the most influential protest songs transcending well beyond the 60s. For What It's Worth was released as a single in 1966, and it climbed to number 5 in Canada and number 7 on the Billboard Hot 100, maybe the greatest number 7 hit ever. And the title of the song came from a comment that was made out of nowhere when he's turning in the tape. Here's what several members of the legendary Buffalo Springfield told me about the song. The song title, For What It's Worth, tell us that story, because there's always been the urban legend about handing the tape to Ahmet Ertegun, and you said...
For What It's Worth, here's a new song. There's something happening here, which would be the obvious title, or Stop Children Must Have Sound, or Look What's Going. Just nothing ever lent it to a title.
Ahmet Ertegun, who was the president of Atlantic Records, came out to LA to hear what kind of songs we had for another album. They were ready to go. They played some songs, so I played some songs, Stephen played some songs, and as we're packing up our instruments, I can hear Stephen right now say, oh, I got another one for What It's Worth. That was it.
That's one of my favorite rock and roll stories ever. Buffalo Springfield. They got to be the only supergroup in history that we all had no clue was a supergroup until years after they broke up. And then they went on to form several legendary entries into supergroups, including Crosby, Stills, and Nash, and Crosby, Stills, Nash, and Young, and Poco, and Neil Young, and Crazy Horse. The Rookie Supergroup, who begot several other supergroups. Man, my brain hurts. Continuing with our countdown of the top 8 protest songs of the 60s, I've got a track that features one of the most powerful, resounding voices of the era, Fortunate Son by John Fogerty and Creedence Clearwater Revival at number 5. Of course, Fortunate Son riffs on the class-based unfairness of the Vietnam War draft, or drafts in general. While the sons of the wealthy and the powerful often got deferments or officer slots, working-class men were sent to the infantry to fight and die. It almost happened to my dad. It's a sharp critique of the social and political system that tipped the scales toward privilege. Fogerty recalled that the unfairness of the draft was boiling inside of him. The tipping point came for him when he heard that David Eisenhower, President Eisenhower's grandson and President Nixon's future son-in-law, had a privileged position during his military service. John Fogerty felt that the government and older generations had turned a deaf ear to the concerns of young people, and Fortunate Son was his way of blasting back against the establishment. John Fogerty himself was drafted, channeling the intense anger and frustration that he felt into the song. That personal stake truly fuels the urgency of the message. Lines like, it ain't me, I ain't no fortunate one. It crystallized a resentment and the sense of injustice here. John Fogerty was drafted in 1966 and served in the Army Reserve, which fueled his anger at the system. He recalled going into the bedroom of his apartment with a pen and a yellow notebook, and he wrote Fortunate Son in roughly 20 minutes. He was definitely motivated directly by his feelings about the draft and the inequities that it represented at that time. Even today, now into his 80s, John Fogerty hasn't lost his contempt for social privilege in all its forms. That outrage was actually kindled at a very early age when he saw the parade of limousines driving to the White House for the inauguration of President Dwight D. Eisenhower. Even as a young boy, Fogerty knew that there was a division between the political elite and the common folk, the average everyday man. It bothered him for many years, and it came to his head when he experienced the disparity of the unfortunate from the fortunate. Fortunate Son was not only one of the most important protest songs of the 60s, it's one of his biggest hits, rising to number 3 as a single for John Fogerty and Creedence Clearwater Revival back in '69. Martha and the Vandellas' 1965 hit Nowhere to Run is about being stuck in a toxic, inescapable relationship, abusive one. Written by Holland Dozier Holland, one of the greatest songwriting teams ever, the lyrics follow someone who knows their partner is no good, but can't break free, seeing their lover's face everywhere and finding there's nowhere to hide. But it's also been adopted as a protest song, one of the greatest. Its broader metaphor of feeling trapped by powerful forces that clicked with the era's turmoil. Think the Vietnam War and the Civil Rights Movement. It gave the track a bigger political resonance beyond the relationship story only, especially because it was released during a very turbulent time in American history. The late Lamont Dozier shared the heartbreaking story with me about how he was inspired to write Nowhere to Run after meeting a young man drafted for Vietnam. He saw him at a farewell party. Here's what he told me.
And this kid was so frightened, man. He was going off to Vietnam, and he just, he had this premonition that he was not going to make it. Oh. And I was trying to talk to him. Don't deal with that, man. Be positive about the thing. You know, you'll probably be over there a few months and come back or whatever, do your bit. And he wasn't over there 3 weeks, man, about 3 months, 3 months. And they shipped him back, you know what I mean? And because he got blown up in some hand grenade situation, you know what I mean? And he would just knew, he wouldn't say anything. We had this party going at my house and all his friends, and he just sat there, man. He just knew, he just had this premonition, you know what I mean? And he just sat there and and his girlfriend was trying to get him to laugh, dance, comfort him, and he was watching everybody like he was looking at them like he wasn't going to see these people anymore, you know. He had this strange look in his eye, man. I'll never forget that. And that was part of that time, that Nowhere to Run. People were feeling this feeling, man. They had a feeling going across the country, you know, like that. So many things. All the colleges and things were up rioting and because they didn't want this war and a whole lot of crap was going on, man. But anyway, this kid was just one of the tragedies that was brought to mind when I think about that song, Nowhere to Run.
The urgent, frantic drive and the sharp lyrics of Nowhere to Run captured a growing sense of anxiety about the war and the feeling of being trapped by it. The title, Nowhere to Run, spoke to draftees and anti-war voices who felt there was no easy escape from the escalating conflict that they didn't start, and they were going to go to die for nothing. I mean, I think we can all say it by now. The Vietnam War was wrong. It was wrong for us to get involved. How many innocent men died for nothing? That's what we have from years of hindsight, of looking back, and that's why these songs were so powerful. At the same time, the track struck a chord with the Civil Rights Movement. Many Black Americans felt boxed in by the injustice that they were feeling, making the idea of being surrounded by hostile, inescapable forces feel especially resonant. Whether the pressure came from a lover or a broader social struggle, all of these factors make Nowhere to Run an important track of the rock era. But it's also notable because it was a female-fronted song in an industry dominated by male voices. Martha Reeves and the Vandellas were brilliant in conveying the variety of emotions in the song that the song gave rise to. The single shot to number 8 on the Billboard Hot 100 and number 5 on the Billboard R&B chart in '65, an example why Holland Dozier Holland had the Beatles shaking in their boots. Charging in at number 3 on our top 8 protest songs of the '60s, I've got Eric Burdon with The Animals, but we got to get out of this place.
In this dirty old part of the city where the sun...
The Animals, We Gotta Get Out of This Place is a working-class lament about chasing a better life. It paints a bleak picture of hard labor and few opportunities, telling of a young person who wants to escape a tough environment, symbolized by a dying father and a hard city, and the dream of a brighter future for themselves and their lover. The song struck a chord as a powerful anthem for Vietnam War soldiers who felt trapped and longed to get out.
Watch my daddy in bed crying. Watch his hand.
We Gotta Get Out of This Place stands out as a great protest song because it taps into a truly universal feeling. Being trapped in a dangerous, oppressive situation, and the voices in a way that hits soldiers.
We gotta get out of this place. If it's the last.
This is a song that my dad introduced to me when I was very, very young, and it's always been an anthem. We Gotta Get Out of This Place stands out as a great protest song because it taps into a universal feeling. Being trapped in a dangerous situation, feeling we've got to get out. And it voices it was a way that hit soldiers, American troops in the Vietnam era. They embraced it as a driving force to persevere, seeing their own fear and longing for escape reflected in its lyrics.
There's a better life for me and you.
Actually, there was a 2006 study of Vietnam veterans that found that this was the song that they identified with the most out of any song they were hearing at that time, even the Doors, cementing its role as a powerful symbol of that era.
And one thing I know is true, yeah, you'll be dead before.
Gotta Get Out of This Place had an interesting journey before it became a renowned song of protest and an anthem of liberation. The prolific husband and wife team of Barry Mann and Cynthia Weil wrote and cut a demo of We Gotta Get Out of This Place with Barry Mann singing and playing the piano. It's actually aimed at the Righteous Brothers at first, the duo that they'd written the big hit You've Lost That Love and Feeling for. But then Barry Mann landed his own recording contract, and his label Redbird Records decided that this should be the song that he released. It should be his song. Meanwhile, Alan Klein heard the demo and he pitched it to Mickey Most, the producer for the group The Animals. Most had already put out a call to Brill Building writers for material for The Animals' next sessions. That same call yielded It's My Life.
It's my life and I do what I want. It's my mind.
And Don't Bring Me Down.
Don't bring me down. I beg you, darling.
Both ended up being huge songs. The Animals ended up recording the song, We Gotta Get Out of This Place, before Barry Mann could. That was initially very troubling for Barry, especially when Burden changed the lyrics without their permission. Here's the story from both Barry Mann, the late Cynthia Weil, and Eric Burden. Probably in my top 10 favorite songs of all time.
We were writing a song for the Righteous Brothers, and
you know,
I think you came up with the melodic idea.
the thing that came up first was that riff.
Yeah.
They ended up changing it for a guy who's from a coal mining town, and I mean, they did what they did, and I really think in a way it helped. It helped for that. You know, it helped the song.
I wasn't really conscious of what I was doing, changing lyrics and everything. It just came out that way. I was sitting in the Beverly Hills doctor's office one day. There was this lady sitting next to me, and she turned around to me and she said, "You're Eric Burden, aren't you?" And I said, "Yeah." She said, "You know, my husband and I, we hated what you did with our song." I said, "Oh, I'm terribly sorry." And she got up and she walked towards because they called her into the office. She turned around and she said, "But we got used to it." So,
Cynthia Weil, right?
yeah, it's Cynthia. Yeah.
We gotta get out of this place. Girl, there's a better.
Coming in at the bridesmaid position, our number 2 today, I've got the Byrds with Turn, 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 one of my favorite songs ever. The Byrds' Turn, Turn, Turn traces its roots to Pete Seeger, who adapted almost all the lyrics from the book of Ecclesiastes in the Bible. And he added the famous chorus along with the final line, "A time for peace, I swear it's not too late." It was to give it a contemporary message of change and peace during the Vietnam era.
Peace, I swear it's not too late.
That made it a protest song. In fact, I was recently interviewing Paul Schaefer, the great musician and, of course, David Letterman's legendary sidekick. We were talking about this. Here's a little part of that. Roger McGowan is telling me a story where he said that Pete Seeger told him, "Well, I made it a protest song because I swear it's not too late." That last line he put in there, he said, "I made it a protest song with that last line," you know?
Oh, well, you see, Professor, as we bring the class, you've told me something that I'll carry with me now. I never knew that about Turn, 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 but I'm happy to know it.
That unmistakable chord progression and chorus of Turn, Turn, Turn have kept turning up in 60s era scenes in lots of movies. Heart Like a Will, Forrest Gump, episodes of The Wonder Years, many of them, even Ken Burns' documentary, The Vietnam War. The rendition by the Byrds hit #1 on the Billboard Hot 100 in December of 1965, a year when the country was deep in conflict and change. Troops were arriving in Vietnam. There were campus protests that were in full swing. Civil rights activism was intensifying, and LBJ was pushing his great society. Across that moment, a chorus of shaggy-haired, unshaven young people urged America to turn, 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 embracing the idea that history is cyclical and that change, while hard, is inevitable. Musically, the Byrds capture the era's sound. Roger McGuinn later called the guitar work Beatlesque and noted they borrowed a drum feel from Phil Spector, who didn't. Yet the song itself was written from a tradition root by the leader of American folk music, using lyrics that go back more than 2,000 years. The Byrds' folk rock tale is the version most people remember, becoming the era's defining read on change, even though many artists have covered it through the years. It really captured the moment, even as Seeger's own version stayed simpler and more folksy.
To everything, turn, turn, turn.
There's an interesting twist, though, to this storyline, because like I said, most of the lyrics came straight from the Bible. Pete Seeger helped steer some of the royalties to a cause that he cared about here, the Israeli Committee Against House Demolitions. And there was a fair bit of controversy around the song centering on its use of a public domain biblical text as the basis for a modern protest hit, raising questions about authorship, adaptation, and the commercialization of a spiritual-tinted message in a popular format. Get that. Truth is, Pete Seeger didn't set out to write another protest tune. He wrote Turn, Turn, Turn after a publisher's dare in 1959. The letter read like a challenge. Pete, can you write another song like Goodnight Irene? I can't sell or promote these protest songs. Seeger wasn't swayed, though. He shot back with his trademark rebelliousness. You better find another songwriter, because this is the only kind of song that I know how to write.
And a time to every purpose under heaven.
The Byrds made Turn, Turn, Turn more accessible, though, by surfacing it in a folk rock vibe that helped shape. Jim McGuinn, really Roger McGuinn, but he's Jim back then, he kicked off the arrangement, giving it a sharper rock-leaning edge, and they built it around that signature chiming Rickenbacker 12-string guitar. Then the band layered in rich vocal harmonies by David Crosby, Gene Clark, and McGuinn, turning the track into a lush, full-sounding hybrid that bridged traditional folk with a modern radio-friendly feel.
There is a season, turn, turn, turn.
It took 78 takes to get the song right before they sent it to mastering for that final release version.
It's my favorite song because of not just the melody, but the lyrics and what it says. It's very reassuring. I mean, it makes it feel like things are under control.
All right, for our #1 pick, I got a double dose for you here. A legend who wrote many of the world's greatest protest songs. I think the greatest poet in rock history. So I'm going to give you a double-sided #1. Bob Dylan with both Blowin' in the Wind.
The answer is blowing in the wind.
And the times are changing.
Oh, the times they are changing.
So let's start with Blowin' in the Wind. Dylan said he wrote Blowin' in the Wind in 10 minutes in one afternoon. He actually took the melody from an old slave song called No More Auction Block.
No more auction block for...
He likely learned that from the Carter family records, took that melody, and he put words to it. But check this out. That very night, right after he'd written it, Bob Dylan took this song to the nightclub Gertie's Folk City in Greenwich Village, where he played a set. Before he went into this song, he said, and I quote, "This here ain't no protest song or anything like that, because I don't write no protest songs." Then in the middle of his performance, Bob Dylan couldn't read his own handwriting, and he had to improv the lyrics right then and there. He actually made up some of the lyrics as he went along, and they were incredible. He recorded it on July 9th, 1962, and he played it live quite a bit, but he didn't put it out until May 27th of 63.
How many roads must a man walk down?
All right, now let's talk about the times era changing. Such an incredible song. For this anthem, Bob Dylan drew on traditional Irish and Scottish ballads to craft a song built from short, tight verses that stack up in a hypnotic rhythm.
and admit that the waters around you have grown.
He recorded it in late 1963, and it appeared on his 1964 album of the same name. Now, interestingly, its release came before President Kennedy's death, which then gave the lyrics a sense of ominous prophetic weight in hindsight. Less than a month after Dylan recorded the song, President John F. Kennedy was taken on November 22nd, 1963. Remember, I can't say certain words on here, so I have to say the word taken from us. Really dumb. The next night, Dylan opened a concert with the times they were changing. He told a biographer, Anthony Scaduto, that he second-guessed himself about opening his set with that song, thinking to himself, wow, how can I open with this song? I'll get rocks thrown at me. But he felt compelled to sing it, and it ended up being the right call. The audience was mesmerized by the message of the song, and it remained that way throughout the entire Era Changing is a rallying call to move with the coming changes or get left behind. As the line goes, if your time to you is worth saving, then you better start swimming or you'll sink like a stone. Oh man, what a great lyric. The song became an anthem for the civil rights era and other justice struggles, signaling that power structures would shift and the new would rise from the Well, that's our countdown of the top 8 protest songs of the 60s. Many of these tracks were overt anti-Vietnam War anthems, while others were, they weren't written as anti-war songs, but became such because of the poignant lyrics that hit home for people living through the era. What do you think are the greatest protest songs ever? Let's have a great discussion. What are your memories of this song? What do you think? Is Dylan the greatest poet in history, greatest rock poet? Let's have a nice discussion below. If you like our content, I invite you to subscribe. We'd love to have you as part of our community. Till next time, 3 chords and the truth, my friends.